If you have a brain injury and experience the persistent symptoms of light sensitivity and headaches, working on a computer or phone screen can be extremely difficult. Just looking at a screen can make symptoms worse and often hold you back from returning to school or work. The social distancing and stay-at-home restrictions that came with the COVID-19 pandemic fast-tracked a move from in-person communications to virtual ones. Companies have set up their employees to work from home, and many have stated that moving forward, they might keep it this way for a large percentage of their workforce. As well, schooling has moved online for the next school semester, posing challenges for both students and teachers. And while restrictions on social interactions have been lifted, people will likely continue to have Zoom gatherings now that they are used to it. All of this online activity has its associated problems, psychologically, neurologically, and visually. This is Brain Injury in the Virtual World, a presentation of Visual Stress Canada. In this course, you are going to learn about identifying the triggers in the visual environment that cause discomfort, why your brain is reacting to these triggers and causing the physical, visual, and perceptual symptoms, and the tools and strategies that you can use to reduce the effect of the triggers and reduce and manage symptoms. Many of you will not have heard the term visual stress, and therefore it is unlikely that you have had it investigated as a contributor to your symptoms and difficulties. If you are looking for ways to manage in the virtual world, then this is a great place to start. With knowledge comes understanding, and with understanding comes the power to change lives and the compassion to heal. Hi, my name is Karen Monet, and I am the CEO of Opticom and the Opticom Visual Stress Clinic, where almost all of the clients referred to us have had brain injuries, and all of them suffer from post-trauma vision difficulties, persistent headaches, light sensitivity, balance issues, and visual difficulties that have been holding them back from going to school, work, out in public, and doing many of the things that they were capable of before their injury or illness. A member of the International Institute of Colorimetry, I'm also the founder of the Visual Stress Canada Association, a nonprofit organization whose main goal is to develop the visual stress community to increase advocacy, research, education, and support for people with the condition, their families, and the healthcare and education specialists who work with them. For the past 9 years, I have been researching and learning about visual stress from experts in the field around the world, and I have been fortunate to have been able to present this information to healthcare and optometry groups across Ontario and in the UK. Whether it has been an informal gathering at a physiotherapy practice or more formal presentations at large optometry conferences, the audiences have always been really keen to learn more, because visual stress is a little-known neurological condition that can have a profound impact on individuals with migraine, autism, learning difficulties, attention disorders, Lyme disease, and epilepsy. It can also be acquired and made unmanageable following a brain injury. I am here today to help by providing information on how the brain works when the visual system is overwhelmed in this ever-growing virtual online world we are living in. I would like to take a moment at this time to thank Brain Injury Canada for providing me and Visual Stress Canada with this opportunity. It's kind of ironic that I'm presenting on the difficulties with screens on a screen. However, there are some benefits to presenting this way. You get to watch at your own speed, in your comfy clothes, not having to leave the house or worry about parking or physical distancing that would happen if you came to a conference. Before we get started, I have a few suggestions to make this experience as comfortable as possible. First, set yourself up to watch in a quiet spot with few distractions, so turn off your phones, alerts, and pop-ups on your screen. Also, remove visual distractions. Make sure that the area around your screen and everywhere you can see around you is not cluttered. Too much visual information can be distracting and lead to headaches and overwhelm. Then, set the screen up at a height so you're not looking down at it. You may need to prop your laptop on some books or put your tablet on a stand to raise it up to face level, and also so you don't have to hold it. This will reduce neck and shoulder strain. Now find something to place over the screen, like a thick piece of paper or cloth, and so you can just listen to the video. When you want to look, just move aside that cloth a bit, and this way the light is not getting into your eyes even when they are closed. Pause the video here for a minute to make these adjustments if you can. The speed of transition from in-person interactions to virtual ones is accelerating. It has become normal to rarely go to the mailbox or bank because we all do it online. We send birthday wishes via Facebook, we FaceTime with our family, and online is the first place we go to shop. Even our grocery flyers come straight to our phones. And family game night, well, it's moved from boards to screens. But now we have to do even more online, and much of it is stressful stuff, like making applications for financing and government services, figuring out all these new screen sharing technologies, and watching the 24-hour news coverage of COVID-19 and other unsettling world events. Access to healthcare through medical apps and online clinics has been slowly growing, but not mainstream. This was something new to me last year after getting bit by a tick. Having worked with clients in the clinic with Lyme disease, I did not want to get any of the tick-borne diseases they struggle with. In a panic, with my family doctor and walk-in clinic closed and hesitant to go to emergency, a friend suggested an appointment with an online doctor. With COVID-19, healthcare providers from all specialties have had to adapt their service model to see patients via Zoom and other on-screen apps. I was helping a post-concussion client recently on the phone, and she shared with me some of her frustrations with this. She said that, while it was tiring to drive to appointments, wait in bright waiting rooms, and do the work in an open and often noisy clinic environment, she felt done for the day after just 5 minutes on a Zoom meeting with her rehab therapist. An article from National Geographic came into me recently via email, and it highlighted something they called Zoom fatigue. And it makes a lot of sense to me after the few Zoom meetings I've been on. Even for people without already compromised brain capacity, Zoom fatigue is real. The article goes on to explain how virtual interactions can be extremely hard on the brain because we are missing out on the nonverbal cues that we use to create a full understanding of the conversation. Without these cues, we have to focus so hard on what is being said that we are quickly mentally drained. Add a multiple of faces and it can be impossible to decode so many people at once. This multitasking can lead to overwhelm and exhaustion. I'll drop a link to the full article in the Visual Stress Canada Association's website, visualstress.ca. All referenced articles, research papers, links, and documents mentioned in this video will be made available on the visualstress.ca website in the Education tab. Membership is free until the official launch of the association in October 2020. On the site, you will also be able to access the podcast and blog versions of this video's content and other videos, downloads, and articles as we develop and post them. In order to understand how visual information triggers the brain and the resulting symptoms you experience, it is important to understand the visual system. The visual system is very complex. In the very simplest of terms, the eye receives visible light, where it is converted into a molecular signal that travels along a complex neural channel to reach the visual cortex. In this visual cortex is where information is identified, categorized, and assessed to build a representation of the surrounding environment. What is it that we're seeing, including the distance between things, their motion, colors, and more? Separate from this sensory process is the psychological process of visual perception. If the visual cortex is agitated by the visual information we are feeding it through our eyes, then this process is negatively impacted, and our perception of our environment can be altered. This agitated reaction is referred to in research as cortical hyperexcitability. The stress leads to an excess of blood rushing to the area, which can interfere with the identification, categorization, and assessment of what it is that we're seeing. This is where most of the complaints from our clients come from. Their brains are overwhelmed by information that it cannot tolerate, and the symptoms of pain, pressure, nausea, balance problems, reading and concentration difficulties, perceived movement, and hypersensitivities to light are all because the brain is no longer working efficiently and is under stress. You may be able to relate to this feeling of heat, the pressure and pain here at the back of the head. This is visual stress. Visual stress is made worse with too much screen time, too much near time, and too much indoor time. Since the first element of the visual system is the eye, then we must start our investigation there, fully and properly. This may seem obvious, but start with having your vision checked. There are a few things that change with your vision when you have suffered a head injury, brain injury, or even sometimes whiplash. So it is very important to have a full vision assessment following an injury of this type. This is even if you have had your eyes checked just before your accident. We've had many clients in this situation where they've just picked up their new prescription glasses and shortly after were in an accident or received a concussion. It doesn't matter how close to your injury you had your eyes tested. Once you have injured your brain, the visual system may have changed. These are a few things that our clients have experienced, and you may also have experienced these as well. So one was the prescription changes, and unfortunately it may change a few times as your visual system adjusts to the injury. Your eye care provider can help you address your vision changes. Make sure to ask them about this and go back to your optometrist to review any changes or discomfort you are feeling. Secondly, your old glasses may be too difficult to wear. If you have bifocals or multifocal lenses, you may not be able to wear them anymore. The way the prescription transitions through the lens may be now too difficult for your brain to manage. And thirdly, the blue blocking, the yellowish tint that you may have purchased for computer use, or the anti-reflective coating to reduce glare may no longer be comfortable. And if you've had your glasses tinted, this may not work anymore, or the tint of your sunglasses may not be the right tint for you. These points demonstrate that the glasses that worked before your injury may not be right for you now, and they may be contributing to your vision difficulties. Make sure to get a full vision assessment to investigate these and other post-trauma vision changes. The Canadian Association of Optometrists is a great resource for eye health. They have an eye health library where they have information on digital eye strain, visual stress, and other great information on nutrition, lighting, safety, and preventions. An article on eye strain is particularly relevant to our discussion here on the difficulties you experience with the online world. As mentioned earlier, we are spending too much near time. Think about it. If you are spending more time at home, you are not driving or taking public transit to work or shopping, going to theaters or outdoor festivals, or watching or participating in live sporting events. In fact, all of these activities involve looking at items in the distance. Now we are rarely using our distance vision. Instead, we are in our homes, on our computers, and we are overusing our near vision and not offering our brains the relaxing far vision focusing that can give it a break from all the details in our near environment. And this too may be contributing to your headaches and vision issues. When people do an excessive amount of near vision work, they may experience a false myopia. That is a blurred distance vision caused by overuse of the eye's focusing mechanisms. After long periods of near work, our eyes are unable to refocus to see clearly in the distance. Clear distance vision usually returns after resting the eyes. However, constant stress on the eyes to focus close may lead to permanent reduction in distance vision over time. But there is something you can do, and it is nothing new, just becoming more important, and it's the 20-20-20 rule. The Canadian Association of Optometrists recommends you follow this rule to reduce eye strain. Every 20 minutes, take a 20-second break and focus your eyes on something 20 feet away, or better, even further. Set a timer, look off into the distance, maybe a plant that you place down the hall. This is also a good opportunity to get out of your chair and move your legs and shoulders a bit. I know that I've been sitting a lot more lately and for a lot longer than usual, so when I do get up, I often feel seized up. While taking these short breaks are great, we are still spending too much time overall online and need to take longer breaks. and not just a break from the computer to go watch TV or check your social media accounts. You need to take a real break from screens. Go for a walk, sit outside, watch the clouds or stars, or stare at nothing and let your mind wander to hopefully good things. You're probably familiar with the term ergonomics. This term likely brings to mind special chairs and the setup of a workstation. Well, ergonomics is basically the study and management of the body and how it interacts with the physical environment. Workplace ergonomics identifies best practices for the way your chair, desk, keyboard, mouse, and screen should be set up to reduce injury and improve comfort. This is especially important now with all the extra time spent at our computers. This is what I was getting at the beginning of the video when I offered suggestions for setting up your screen to view this video. I won't be going into more detail on physical ergonomics here and suggest you take a look at the recommendations for workstation setup if you haven't already. There are many excellent resources online, and I'll post a link to the workstation checklist at visualstress.ca. This was created in part by Health Canada's Workplace Health and Safety Program, and I'll also include a link to the picture guide from the University of Waterloo. What I want to talk to you about is really visual ergonomics. That is the understanding of human visual processes and the interactions between humans and their visual environment. I want to help you create a healthy visual environment. And I love this quote: "If you are what you eat, then you are also what you see and hear." So we should eat a healthy diet and look at a healthy visual environment. But what is a healthy visual environment? The human visual system was evolved over millions of years and was created to do its best work in a natural visual environment, not one found at the office or big box stores. Take a look at these images. One is natural, the others are man-made. You will easily notice the differences. Look at the patterns. The nature shot has very little pattern. It is as soft as opposed to the sharp angular patterns in the man-made environments. The contrast in nature is very low versus the high contrast in the other images. The colors in nature are muted shades of colors and greens versus a lot of more black and white in the other images. And while these are not videos, you can also see the pace of the movement, slow and meandering, and indirect versus high speed in the other. And you know the difference in the light, natural light versus fluorescent. Patterns, contrast, light, glare, movement, and flicker are the key triggers to visual stress and the main source of your discomfort from screens. These unnatural visual images, found almost everywhere in our visual environment, are all interconnected. You don't usually get one without the other. Fluorescent lights flicker. Text is a high contrast pattern and moves on the screen when you scroll. The screen itself is a light that flashes as it refreshes. Video ads and other pop-ups are colorful and flash on your screen. The online virtual world is a hot mess of visual triggers. The tight, striped, high contrast patterns like those found on our screens have been shown in brain scans to trigger the visual cortex into a state of stress, that cortical hyperexcitement I mentioned earlier. I was speaking recently to Dr. Arnold Wilkins, one of the main contributors to visual stress research over the past 40 years, and he told me how a neurologist had just contacted him for his input on a project that he did with his epileptic patients. He had sent them out to take photographs of things that they felt uncomfortable looking at, and it turned out that all of the photos met the mathematical criteria for inducing a high pattern glare response and visual stress. In the case of individuals with light-induced epilepsy, these patterns can lead to seizures, and for light-induced migraines, specifically migraines with aura, these patterns can trigger migraines as well. If I were to ask you, someone with a head injury and persistent visual symptoms, to go out and do the same, I'm pretty sure that your photos would look very similar to these. As part of our visual stress assessment in the clinic, we use something called the pattern glare test to determine our client's level of pattern sensitivity. Almost all of our clients are highly sensitive to pattern, but when we ask them, they usually say they aren't because they hadn't really thought about it or understood what pattern sensitivity is. So a healthy visual image is one that is in lower contrast, is not striped, and stationary. This is everything our work environment is not. So what can you do? Going back to the "you are what you see" statement earlier, it is time to put your eyes on a visual diet. In 2015, researchers in the Netherlands found that students looking at pictures of nature helped to reduce their stress reaction during a stressful test versus looking at pictures of buildings. Our visual system works optimally in nature with the colors, light, and contrast found in natural images. So it doesn't really matter if the nature you are looking at is in a picture, out your window, or underfoot. Take a look around your desk, around your computer. Is it clear or messy? Now take a look at the sides. Is that messy? Now take a look at the wall behind your computer. Are there lots of things pinned up? That visual clutter can be seen by your peripheral vision, and if you are like many of our clients with visual overwhelm, your brain cannot ignore the images in your peripheral vision. Your brain is processing it while you are trying to focus ahead at the screen. As much as you can, clear the area up around where you are working. As I was writing my notes for this section, I looked around my desk and thought, I should take a picture to show what not to do. But then I decided it was too embarrassing and I took a break to clean it up. I put away all the stuff that needed to go away. My desk is currently in a state of major chaos, working from home with 3 workstations and extra filing cabinets and stuff from the clinic while we were closed for quarantine. In any case, after I was done tidying up, it was much clearer and I actually felt less overwhelmed. Perhaps also because I took a visual break and stretched my legs and shoulders. So bring softer textures and colors into your visual environment. Put up pictures of your favorite nature scenes. Put plants, fake or real, around your home and office, and home office these days. And look at adding softly patterned fabrics. I talk a bit more about this in the article I wrote for Brain Injury Canada back in the summer of 2018 called "The Influence of Visual Triggers on Symptoms in Brain Injury and Concussion." I'll add a link to that at the visualstress.ca site for you to access. And finally, when you do your 20-20-20 eye break from the computer, make sure to look at something natural, not a bookcase down the hall or a parking lot outside. Now let's move on to screen intolerance. While people suffer from a myriad of symptoms following a brain injury, and for many, 15 to 20% of the population, photosensitivity can persist for weeks, months, or years. Unfortunately, studies on management options of light sensitivity suggest that the recovery is a long-term process. This photosensitivity is often reported as computer screen intolerance. Physicians generally advise avoiding screen time because the liquid crystal display (LCD) screens on their phones, monitors, and TVs have been shown to make symptoms worse and interfere with recovery. But we can't stop using them if we want to communicate, work, or learn. Why does the brain react like this to screens? I mentioned earlier when talking about the visual system that some brains can get visually stressed. Many studies dating back to the early 1980s, and certainly there are much more recently, using several types of brain scanning technologies have demonstrated that when some individuals are presented with certain lights, pattern, flicker, and movement, their visual cortex can become stressed. These images can lead to a hyperactivation or an overexcitement of that part of the brain that processes visual information. This stress reaction adds pressure and slows down processing, leading to headaches, brain fog, and cognitive fatigue. And screens have all of that. A computer screen is basically a big flat light. You focus hard to see what's written on this light, and this can lead to less blinking, dry eye, and eye strain. The screen image light refreshes at a high frequency that, while not a problem for most, can be perceived as flicker by many individuals with brain injuries. This flickering makes it difficult to fuse the image, so the information getting to the brain is incomplete and out of order. Add to this, the movement and changing of ads and scrolling of text adds to the flicker. So it's no surprise that you feel nauseous, tired, sore, and frustrated when working on your screen. So what can we do to your screen? Well, first, knowing that the triggers are light and color, pattern and contrast, and flicker and movement allows us to identify and remove alter or manage the triggers so symptoms are reduced and you have more cognitive dollars to spend on screen time or other things that you'd like to do with your day. So let's start with changing light and color. First of all, there's brightness. I'm pretty sure most of you have already done this. You can reduce the brightness, the overall amount of this light that the screen emits, by adjusting the display settings. However, I would like to warn you, while you may be tempted to dim the screen brightness substantially, if you do so, you may end up creating another problem. You will now have to strain to see if it's too dark. This is the same as wearing dark sunglasses inside. You block the painful light, but now you have to strain to see. Or you have to take the glasses on and off to read labels, and this flicking on and off of the bright light can contribute to your discomfort. At your computer station, make sure the light around the screen is of similar intensity to the light on your screen. I personally use a task light that I can dim to 4 different levels with a remote control. I go from bright when the sun is shining in the room to dimmer at night to match the room light and my screen brightness. This makes it a lot easier for me to work on the computer for longer periods of time. Changing the color. Before we get into changing the screen color, I need to talk to you a little bit about light. The light we see around us from our lamps, it's not just white. It is a combination of colors that make it white. We're all familiar with the prism image. The prism image shows how light comes in and separates it into color elements. The visual light spectrum is the section of electromagnetic waves between infrared and ultraviolet that can be captured by the light-sensitive cones in the retina at the back of our eyes. These cones are sensitive to the series of wavelengths from about 400 to 700 nanometers. Each section of the area corresponds to a visible color. So, for example, yellow wavelengths fall around 580 nanometers. People with light sensitivity may only be sensitive to one section of these wavelengths, but which ones? Unlike sound, where we can identify the specific wavelengths we are sensitive to, like a high-pitched sound or a low bass sound, we are unable to identify the wavelengths of light that cause us problem. You may already know that you are bothered by certain colors, say the blue Christmas lights or some orange or yellow color, but you can't pinpoint the color within white light that you are sensitive to. So you just say, I'm sensitive to light as a whole. In the Opticom clinic, we use a medical device that takes our clients through the full spectrum of visible light. The device allows us to alter the hue, saturation, and intensity independently, and we can get over 100,000 colors and identify with great precision the wavelengths that clients are uncomfortable with, and then create a custom filter to block these wavelengths. There are some things you can do yourself to tint your computer screens. However, when I introduce the idea of tinting screens, many people tell me that they have already tried this with no luck. Most of the time, they are referring to programs like Flux that changes their screens from the warm yellowy orange tones to the cool blue tones to match daylight and evening light. These warm, cool colors may not be optimal for your post-concussion brain, so you may think, I've tried that, but it just made it worse. Your best color may be something entirely different, like turquoise or purple. What I'm referring to when I say screen tinting is a full range of color options. Screen tinting software allows you to tint the screen a custom color. This software gives you 10 preset colors to choose from that you can further customize to meet your needs. You have the option of setting up a reading ruler connected to your mouse or a solid overlay that sits on your screen wherever you locate it. This is not connected to your mouse and can be made to cover the whole screen or stretched across multiple monitors. For many years, programmers have been trying to get phone manufacturers to allow them to program apps that allow the user to tint the screen. These sort of worked on Android but never worked on Apple products until just a few years ago when Apple introduced color filters in their latest operating system, iOS 10. The feature is available in their Accessibility Display Accommodations area and is called Color Filters. When turned on, you are able to go through a full spectrum of colors to find what is comfortable and then set your phone, tablet, or monitor screen tint to that color. Software has been available for custom tinting PC screens for over 20 years. Crossbow Education in the UK, whose overlays and software we distribute, have been the leader for almost 30 years. But newer providers offering many more assistive tools together in one piece of software have come into the market in recent years. TextHelp out of Scotland has a great product that offers screen masking and tinting, as well as a whole host of other tools that will be useful for those with screen intolerance. Both tinting the screen and masking the amount of light on the screen that is visible will help to reduce the triggers and in turn make the screen less difficult to look at and improve tracking and comfort. Now on to the triggers of contrast and patterns. I spoke earlier about pattern sensitivity and how it is triggering the visual area of the brain's stress response. Well, I'm sure that you'll be interested to learn that the pattern of text on the page is the worst of the patterns. Not only is the line of black text running horizontally bad, it's also the vertical lines of all the letters. You may have already noticed that you like some fonts better than others. And there are serif fonts with the curled ends like Times New Roman and the sans serif fonts like Arial. And there's a mathematical formula to determine what font shape makes the fewest trigger patterns. Research released this March from a School of Psychology and Neuroscience in Scotland found that the speed and comfort of reading can be determined by the shape and size of the font. One of the lead researchers, Arnold Wilkins, shared with me early on in the study that the Google Open Sans font appeared to be the front runner for reading speed and comfort. Because of this, we used the Google Open Sans font when updating our Opticom website and for the new Visual Stress Canada site. It is especially designed for legibility across print, web, and mobile interfaces, and if it's not ready on your font options, it's free to download. Aside from the font, the text printed across the page creates a pattern. The standard font size and spacing of most printed documents creates a pattern that has been shown to be equal to that triggers discomfort when tested for neurological response in patients, and it has been shown to create visual stress. Researchers have used functional MRIs and other brain scanning equipment to demonstrate that these patterns induce that hyperexcitement and a large hemodynamic response in the visual cortex. That is, a large blood flow reaction to the visual area of the brain. They noted that this response is abnormally large in individuals with migraine, who are particularly susceptible to pattern glare. The same is known now for individuals with brain injuries and other neurological and neurodevelopmental diagnoses. So how can you change this pattern? The pattern can be changed by altering the size of the text and the line spacing and the font, which we have already suggested you use Open Sans. To find out what works best for you, open a Word document and try out pages of text in the Open Sans font. Make each page a different font size with different line spacing so you can compare them and find out which is more comfortable for you. Larger fonts and line spacing changes the reading material from the tighter spacing that creates the unpleasant striped pattern. Changing the contrast. The contrast of dark black text on bright white paper or screens can trigger discomfort for many with post-trauma vision difficulties. You can start by reducing the saturation of the black text, trying out different levels of gray. While you may be inclined to reduce the contrast with your screen settings, be careful not to reduce it too much, as you may now have to strain to see the letters. Some find night mode is easier for them, and fortunately, more and more apps and software tools are adding this dark mode to their screen options. But before you adjust your contrast, try changing the screen color first with the filters mentioned earlier. This will change the contrast of the black text and the background, and may allow you to increase the clarity without losing visibility. Another option is to change the screen entirely. This is one way to get rid of the flicker and movement of the screen. While there has been some support for individuals using higher-end LCD screens with faster refresh rates, you may know them as gaming monitors. These screens are still LCD and still flicker. Some individuals with visual hypersensitivities are still uncomfortable with these higher resolution screens. They can still sense the flicker, and the sharpness of the image may be overwhelming. An alternative screen is the e-ink screen. These were researched by the Canadian Concussion Centre in 2018, and their results showed that using these non-LCD screens for computer tasks may decrease the risk of making symptoms worse for those with post-concussion syndrome. In fact, many of the study participants said that they would recommend the screen to their other patients with post-concussion syndrome. Non-LCD screens use the same technology as that found in e-readers like Kindle and Kobo. The ones we have at Opticom are large, 13.3-inch screens, and they're either used as standalone Android tablets or secondary computer monitors. What is great about these screens is that they are not backlit, so you're not looking at light. It is more comparable to looking at a gray sheet of paper with dark gray print. Much easier on the eyes. Also, these screens do not constantly refresh the page the way an LCD screen does, so it isn't flickering. Instead, it refreshes only when the content on the screen is changed, and it is easy to turn away when you change a page. The research concluded that these screens have the potential to facilitate return to work or return to school in concussed individuals. Now we have in stock the larger version, and we will be getting these in the note size soon, and the e-ink phone when it becomes available later this year. And as a plus, motor vehicle accident and disability insurers have noticed the benefits to using these screens and are often open to covering the cost for their employees and claimants with screen intolerance. So that's about all I have to say about screens. Let's move on to what other things you can do to improve the overall visual environment to reduce triggers to discomfort in the rest of the work area. You are what you see. Back to our quote about going on a visual diet. Earlier, we learned that to reduce visual stress and visual overwhelm, it is necessary to reduce visual consumption, to remove the clutter and the visual triggers on and around your screen. We must also look around at the light in the environment and make alterations, reductions, and changes to reduce the triggers to discomfort. The more we can reduce the triggers, the more tolerance you will have for the rest of your visual environment, and the easier it will be to cope for longer. It's not just about the stuff you see, it's also about the light you see with. Artificial light has characteristics that can trigger discomfort in individuals with brain injuries and other neurological difficulties such as migraine and autism. While we want to use less artificial light, we still need light when sunlight isn't available. Finding the best artificial light for you is important, and it is not the same for everybody. Firstly, no more fluorescent light. It is not good for your eyes. You may have thought compact fluorescent bulbs were the most environmentally friendly option and replaced all your incandescent bulbs with them a few years back. Well, they are fluorescent, and if you have light sensitivity and/or visual stress, they are very likely adding to your discomfort. I'll include some papers on the health problems associated with fluorescent lights with the rest of the links at visualstress.ca. So you need to pick the right light. You may have also put in the energy-efficient LED bulbs. Some of our customers say that these are worse than fluorescents. So take a look at the color of the bulbs. They may be white, but are they warm white or cool white? What wattage equivalent are they? The LED bulbs may be too bright or the wrong color temperature. And a warning, get good quality bulbs. Some of the cheaper versions do not have the same controls and may flicker, causing problems for you again. Look into replacing your bright white LED with a warm light, and preferably one that you can adjust the color temperature, warm to cool, and the illuminance, or the brightness, with a phone app or a remote. Many of our clients often prefer the remote option as it doesn't need a phone to operate. Even better, replace with an LED bulb that allows for color changing and dimming. That's what I use at my desk. It's actually shades of white, but I also can change it to colors. Research conducted by Philips found that allowing patients to select the color of light in their hospital room led to improved sleep and mood, and reduced depression and length of stay in the hospital environment. This left patients happier, and even the nurses commented on how they too enjoyed the more comfortable lighting. This work was carried out before they launched their hue-colored light system to the general public. And my last suggestion for today is to get a prescription for nature. Get out of the virtual world and into the real world, at least once a day. In snow, sleet, rain, or shine, get some fresh air, natural light, distance focusing, natural colors, and all the good things for your visual system. It's starving for it. Feed it some nature. We know that activity, especially outdoor activity, is good for us. But what is most staggering is how good it is for our brains. National Geographic published a great article in 2016 titled, "This is Your Brain on Nature," where they referenced many research papers on the benefits of nature on the brain, stating, when we get closer to nature, we do our overstressed brains a favor. A University of London journal reports that exposure to nature may engage networks of the brain important for peak psychosocial health. During a hike or exposure to natural stimuli, the mind appears more able to enter a calmer state of introspection and mind wandering, engaging these important brain networks. However, they also showed that these networks are disrupted by multimedia use. I'm not surprised. The Global Wellness Summit released The Future of Wellness 2020 with a full section on prescribing nature. There is enough science about the health benefits of nature to get the attention of the medical profession. Nature as medicine. Nature Conservancy Canada published an article on prescribing nature in their fall 2019 magazine. In it, they highlight the activities of Vancouver family physician Dr. Melissa Lem, who wrote her first prescription for nature in 2009. She is an advocate for nature prescriptions and has prescribed time in nature for depression, stress, attention disorders, and concussions. Healthcare professionals everywhere in Canada and around the world are now essentially medicalizing nature by writing prescriptions for walks in parks. While researching for this video, I came across a podcast, Brain on Nature, where Sarah Allely shares her story and credits nature for helping her recover from her mild traumatic brain injury. If you haven't listened to it, I suggest you do. I'll post the link to her podcast with the rest of the material on the visualstress.ca website. Now, this has been a lot of information, I know, and I hope that you have a chance to get through it all and make it to this point. The great thing about this video and recorded content in general is that you can take your time to digest it and rewatch it. One thing I kept myself busy with while the clinic was closed for the quarantine was setting up my studio and learning how to do videos and podcasts. I want to be able to reach more than just one person at a time. And media like this, videos, podcasts, and blogs, will enable me to reach many more of you with this valuable information. So please go to visualstress.ca in the education area to access the videos, blogs, and podcasts, and the notes to revisit at your own pace. If you join the association and subscribe to the podcast, you will get notified as new content is added. Now, the new content I'm thinking of including will be interviews with brain injury survivors, healthcare providers that work with people recovering from them, researchers, and more detail on topics like these discussed here today. Because this was not a live webinar, there is no chance to do a Q&A session, but I would really appreciate hearing from you. Please contact me with questions or suggestions for topics to cover or ways to improve. You can reach me at karen@visualstress.ca. You can also go to YouTube and check out my Concussions Anonymous channel. We have about 10, 15 or so minute videos that you might also find helpful. And visit opticalm.ca for a wealth of information. Do a self-test and find many of the products mentioned during the video. Thank you for your time. And again, thank you to Brain Injury Canada for this opportunity. On behalf of my team at Opticalm and Visual Stress Canada, we wish you all the best for a strong recovery and a wonderful life. He has to reverse, Nico, because it just went.
I clicked on the stop the arrow.
By the wavelengths of light that causes problems. Are you falling asleep? I'm so sorry.
Dun, dun, dun. Closing